Donald Trump supporters are growing increasingly frustrated as they begin to realize that he is not keeping his campaign promises. The latest controversy centers around Trump's announcement of James Damley's appointment as Deputy Assistant Director of the U.S. Department of Energy. This decision has sparked outrage within the MAGA community, even though Damley's credentials and history make him a seemingly ideal candidate by traditional conservative standards. Damley previously served in Trump's first administration as General Counsel, Commissioner, and Chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. He has an impressive resume, including 2 tours of duty in Iraq as an Army veteran, a bachelor's degree from Yale University, and a Juris Doctor from Vanderbilt University Law School. Despite this background, which would typically align with conservative ideals, Trump supporters took to social media to express their anger, accusing him of betraying his campaign promises. Outrage among Trump's base. One prominent voice was Rebel Girl, a self-described conservative woman who criticized the decision in an all-caps tirade. "We only need a Secretary of Energy. We don't need assistants, helpers, coffee and donut deputies. Shrink the government. Stop the spending of our tax dollars." Her comments highlight a misunderstanding of how the federal government operates. Positions like Deputy Assistant Director are not new. They exist to maintain a chain of command within departments. Rebel Girl's post reflects a common misconception among conservatives about government roles and the necessity of structured bureaucracies. Another user, Seth Patriot, demanded, "Shut it down." The entire Department of Energy. This sentiment was echoed by others, calling for the elimination of government agencies and labeling them unconstitutional. Ironically, these claims often come from individuals who appear to lack a basic understanding of the U.S. Constitution, which explicitly grants Congress the power to establish departments and agencies necessary for executing federal responsibilities. Misplaced frustrations. One particularly bizarre comment asked, "What about Sarah Palin?" suggesting she would be better suited for the role due to her long-standing support for Trump and her experience with energy issues in Alaska. Another user expanded on this, saying, "She would be perfect to handle opening up oil reserves in Alaska and stop supporting China-owned companies like TikTok." These comments reveal the fragmented and sometimes incoherent nature of the grievances within Trump's base. The confusion extends to broader complaints about government overreach and unconstitutional departments. Many of these critics fail to recognize that the growth of government bureaucracy has been a bipartisan trend, often expanding more significantly under Republican administrations. Trump himself did not shrink the federal government during his first term, contrary to conservative ideals. The reality of conservative governance. Conservatives have long championed small government and reduced federal spending. However, history shows that Republican administrations, including George W. Bush and Donald Trump, often preside over significant expansions of federal power and spending. This disconnect between conservative principles and Republican governance highlights the challenges of implementing ideologically consistent policies. For Trump supporters who believed his promises of reducing bureaucracy, the appointment of Damley feels like a betrayal. Yet it is a routine political move that aligns with the operational needs of the government. The outrage stems more from ideological purity tests and misunderstandings than from any substantial deviation from Trump's usual practices. A call for education and perspective. The vitriol directed at Trump over this appointment underscores the need for better political education within his base. Many of these critics rely on talking points rather than facts, leading to misplaced anger and unrealistic expectations. For example, claims that departments like energy are unconstitutional ignore the Constitution's explicit provisions for Congress to create and fund necessary federal institutions. Furthermore, the demand to dismantle federal agencies ignores the essential services they provide. The Department of Energy oversees critical functions such as nuclear security, energy research, and the management of the nation's power grid. Eliminating such agencies would have far-reaching consequences, particularly for states that lack the resources to manage these responsibilities independently. Trump's supporters are experiencing a rude awakening as they confront the realities of governance versus campaign rhetoric. While their frustration is understandable, given the promises made, their criticisms often lack grounding in reality. The outrage over James Danley's appointment is a prime example of how misinformation and ideological rigidity can fuel misplaced anger within political movements. For a movement that prides itself on patriotism and adherence to the Constitution, it might be time for MAGA supporters to revisit the founding document they hold so dear. A more informed electorate would lead to more constructive criticism and realistic expectations from their leaders. Until then, these public outbursts will continue to reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of how government operates and what is truly at stake in national policymaking.